How do you introduce Roland Sebastian Martin? Your full name. He's a journalist extraordinaire and a true voice of our people. First and foremost, he's the host and managing editor of #RolandMartin Unfiltered, the first daily online show in history focused on news and the analysis of politics, entertainment, sports, and culture from an explicitly African-American perspective. Roland has been on just about every major news network, breaking down current events from a Black perspective and bringing the funk and bringing the truth, whether we want to hear it or not. His honesty is enlightening and it also stings like a pastor in church on a Sunday morning. Roland uses his platform to bring awareness to issues that are important to our community, especially when it comes to Black power. And what is the theme of tonight's event? This is power. He saw the train wreck that was the 2017 mayor's election here in St. Louis. And when he found out that I was running again in 2021, he brought his show to St. Louis for a virtual town hall in the middle of a global pandemic, garnering over 3,500 views from across the country. And after I won, my first sit-down interview was not with CNN, was not with MSNBC or any of the other major networks. It was with Roland Martin. We don't have time to talk about all of the accolades, honorary degrees, and awards that Roland has received over his storied career. But I do want to point out that he's married to the Reverend Jacqueline Hood Martin, and they've authored 5 books between them. And it is my honor and my privilege to introduce the man who needs no introduction, the voice of the people, proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the bringer of the noise, the bringer of the funk, the incomparable Roland S. Martin.
Lights up. Like in the club. Turn lights up, please. Turn lights up. Turn lights up. Glad to see everyone here. It's glad to be back in St. Louis. I've spoken to the brothers, Alpha chapter they had their celebration here. That's right. Turn them up. There you go. You see how everybody dressed. See when the crazy Omega or Kappa tried to storm the stage. My man Terry Stark, he is sick. Y'all know the rest of the fraternity youth groups. Y'all know that. It's only one fraternity, Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Y'all know it's Alpha Divine Eight. I'm ready to help them AKAs, man. So it's good to see everybody here. Glad to see supposed to be all back together. If you're not vaccinated, you can leave right now. But it is good to be back out, and I'm certainly glad to be here. Several folks had asked me, my new book is out, White Fear, How the Founding Americans Made White Folks Lose Their Minds. We did not, I was supposed to initially, my team was having to bring them up, but because this is my 4th city this week, 4th city in 5 days. And so I was supposed to go fly to DC yesterday and then bring stuff back, but literally the only flight that got me here is today, but I got here about 2:15. I said, no, let's not chance it, especially Delta. These airlines have been tripping lately. So that's why I came in last night. So unfortunately, we did not have my books here, but here's the deal. I'll definitely be coming back to various places. And so we're in all platforms for the book. This is what it looks like. And yeah, that's a January 6th photo that's on front. I'll talk about that in just a second. And so, of course, all platforms, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Target, Books A Million. You can download it on Audible, but also if you want to exercise power, also order through your favorite black bookstore. Do that as well. So definitely get your copy. I cut right to the chase. As Mayor Jones said, I'm never one to mince words, and so let me just go ahead and tell you right now, somebody, probably a bunch of y'all in the room will be real uncomfortable. That is not my problem. So if you got a problem being uncomfortable, don't blame me, blame God, because He's the one who gave me a spirit to make folk uncomfortable. I've been making people uncomfortable since I was in elementary school, so trust me, they started real early. And so that is going to be the case, just letting you know right now. Let me shout out a couple people. My man Terry Starks is here. He is sick with the eye. And so I had Terry on my show. Terry is trying to get folks straight when it comes to obesity and weight. And so he said, man, when you come to St. Louis, I'm like, all right, I'll be there soon. So shout out to Terry Starks. Terry, go ahead and stand up. And so Terry goes with a diet doctor on Instagram, doing great work when it comes to getting folks lose weight and getting ourselves fit. Let me also shout out, you've seen her on my show as well, Avery Woodley, fitness coach, life coach. She was on the show the other day, same thing. So Avery, go ahead and stand up. Wave and stand up. Y'all need a coach, call her. Y'all need somebody to coach y'all, get your stuff together, but don't be cheap, because she actually gonna charge you, just let you know right now. We understand how that works, and so glad to see Terry, glad to see Avery here as well. And on that point, and I'm going to get to my speech in a second, the mayor talked about that. One of the reasons why I launched Roland Martin Unfiltered is because when TV1 ended my show, I understood where we were going with digital operations. And people came up to me and they said, man, it'd be great to get back to CNN, or I'd love for you to have a show on MSNBC. I had to remind them that the folk who on those networks do not own those shows. I preferred to own my show. I wasn't interested in asking somebody else permission, can I go cover black people? I was not, and the reality is in most newsrooms today, you talk to some 32-year-old white producer, and that was simply not going to happen. And so if you don't own, then you don't control. That's actual power. And I think a lot of us, and let's just be real clear, too many of us have operated by white validation, where we somehow think that if it's not CNN or ABC or NBC or CBS, then it didn't happen. And so don't take lightly when the mayor said she came and did my show first, because here's the question. Were those networks there when she was running?
No.
See, it happens a lot. After you win, all of a sudden they call. Justin Fairfax, he became lieutenant governor of Virginia. All the networks were blowing his phone up. He said, no, I'm doing Roland's show first, because he had me on when all of them did not want to have me on. We're not actually even sitting in this room were it not for the history of the black press, the Chicago Defender, the Pittsburgh Courier, the Atlanta Daily World, Ebony and Jet, and on and on and on. So it would be great if a lot of us would remember folks who were there for us when other folk didn't show up, and be sure to say, no, we're never going to ignore you and exclude you. And so that really has to be something that's on the state of mind for all of us. And so that's just important for me to say. Now let's get to the task at hand. I want you to turn to the person to your left, and I want you to say to them, now is the time to fully maximize our power. Now I want you to turn to the person to your right and say, now is the time to fully maximize our power. So just in case some of y'all fall asleep and y'all forget, at least when somebody asks you, what did he talk about? I gave y'all the title of what I'm talking about, because you can't talk to black people and not tag your text. Now, the person sitting next to you has no idea what tag your text means. That clearly means they ain't never been to a black church. They clearly don't go to church now. So they looking like, what does tag your text mean? Right there, just go ahead and just lay hands on them right there. Michael Jordan is often called the greatest basketball player ever. I disagree. I'll say Bill Russell. even though Bill Wells was captain. And what often happened, folks would always say that Michael Jordan, when he was playing, Michael Jordan was the most powerful basketball player in the NBA. And folks would run around saying that about Michael Jordan's power. And I kept explaining to folks, Michael Jordan was not the most powerful player. People were like, I don't understand what you mean. So when he unretired the second time, and then he chose to play for the Washington Wizards, Michael Jordan left the executive suite and went back on the court. The Wizards began to sell out games. They had never made a profit in the team's history until he returned as a player. Put butts in the seat, television ratings went up, all these things happened because he came back on the court. So then when his knees were aching and he said, you know what, I'm going to give this game up for good, Michael then went back to Ted Leonis, who was one of the minority owners of the Wizards. He said, let's go, I'm going to go back and get my executive job back. So he walks into a meeting with Abe Pollard, who was the owner, now deceased, of the Washington Wizards, and they sit down and Michael says, I'm now ready to come back as the head of basketball operations. Abe Pollard had a different idea. Abe said, well, Michael, we appreciate all the contributions you made previously as the head of basketball operations. We appreciate your contributions to us when it came to the court, but we're going in a whole new direction. Michael sat there stunned, and he looked at Ted Leonis, and he's trying to figure out what in the hell is this man saying to me. He's talking to Michael Jordan. He's talking to the six-time NBA champion. He's talking to MVP. He's talking to Finals MVP. And Abe then hands Michael Jordan a $10 million check, thanking him for his service. Michael is grossly offended that Abe Pollard tells him your services are no longer needed. Michael jumps up, storms out of the meeting, leaves the $10 million check on the desk, walks out of the building, gets in his Jaguar, drives off the lot, hits. And folks were like, I can't believe Abe Pollard did that to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan in that moment learned the difference between leverage, influence, and power. Michael thought he had power because of his basketball skills. No, Michael had leverage and influence. Abe Pollard showed Michael Jordan, I own this. Despite all you think you are merely an employee of mine. And Michael was fired. That is the definition of power. I was calling out a particular advertiser for the lack of spending with black-owned media, and they decided to call my sales team, the external team I use, and they were particularly upset because I was utilizing my social media platforms and my show to take them to task for the lack of spending with black-owned media. Do understand, every year $322 billion is spent on advertising, and black-owned media gets anywhere from 0.5 to 1% of that money. $1 billion is spent by the federal government every single year on advertising. Black-owned media gets $51 million out of the $1 billion. And so the company calls my sales folks, and they were trying to figure out who they could call to get me to stop criticizing them. And they said, I don't think you understand. There's nobody to call. And they were confused. They were trying to figure out, well, surely there's somebody who is over him. And they said, no, let me be clear. There's God, then Roland. Ain't nobody above me. I don't have meetings. I am the meeting. I decide who I call out. I don't answer to anybody. And they were utterly confused. He said, so y'all might want to figure out how to get along with him, because he's going to keep calling y'all out, and he does not. And see, here's the other thing that really bothers me the most, which most folks don't know, because people keep asking me, I understand how you just unwilling to just like play along. I said, right, because you understand, in 2000, when my appendix ruptured, Democratic National Convention, 4 years later, as a result of almost $100,000 in health care costs, I had to file for bankruptcy. Well, guess what? $100,000 got all paid off. The reality is, I have no debt. I owe nobody. The house that they kind of foreclosed on is now paid off. Mama and daddy live in that house. And so when you don't owe nobody, when you have no debt, you can say what the hell you want when you want it. See, it's understanding how to not just have power, but how to wield power, how to use power, how to let some folk know that you're unwilling to back down from them, and you're willing to put it all on the line as a result. See, again, when you don't owe anybody, debt is like invisible shackles. You say, well, I can't say certain things because, you know, I got a kid who's in private school, or I got a mortgage. First of all, I ain't got no kids. I've raised 6 of my nieces. The last 2 have not graduated from high school. Praise the Lord. I ain't going to spend no more money on them. But again, houses are paid off. Cars are paid off. I don't deal with credit cards. And so when you do that, then you have absolute freedom to say what needs to be said. And unfortunately, if we really want to be honest, one of the most fundamental problems in our community right now is too many of our institutions are frankly owned by corporate America.
Yeah.
And so we are not independent to be able to call out the folk we need to call out. So our power is actually diluted, because if we don't do certain things, then they don't fund us. When they don't fund us, now we're operating in debt. And so what I'm trying to get us to understand, that when you begin to truly exercise real power, and in America, power is money. If we are not having a money conversation, then we are not having an American conversation. You can go to the White House right now. How many of y'all been to the White House? You were stood in front of the White House? There's a building to the left of the White House. It's the only one that shares a lawn with the White House. You want to understand America? Understand that building is the Department of Treasury. White House is power, Treasury is money. Power, money, money, power. If we ain't talking about money, we're not having an American conversation. So one of the reasons we're sitting here trying to deep grapple with this question of power, because unfortunately we have been sidelined and frozen out of the economic prosperity in this country from the moment we arrived here. Now, let me be real clear. America has always loved black people. White folks in America have truly loved us because we have been able to make this country money. We created the capitalistic system. You can't talk about the American industrialization system and how we were able to excel in that period after the Civil War, because who created the finances that created the resources to do that? Slavery did. You don't have your major insurance companies today if it were not for the property that was being sold. And so it wasn't a southern thing. The northern folk were making money as well as a result. We created this thing called capitalism, but have never been able to participate in this capitalistic system because we've been frozen out. 10 to 12-year period after slavery, the Reconstruction period. Arguably the most successful period in history for us. 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment being passed. Those critical amendments, anybody who heard Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson on Monday, school all of those other conservative jurists on the history, the 14th Amendment and what it was about, and it was specifically written to benefit black people. If you don't believe me, go read it for yourself. That was a period in which we begin to see economic prosperity, yet we also saw how we were damaged when the Freedmen's Bank was created, and they literally stole what is in modern day terms $3 billion worth of money from freed slaves, and we never got a bank bailout. And then you have the election in 1876, contested election. And then all of a sudden you begin to see the Great Compromise of 1877, which ushered in Jim Crow, 92 years of Jim Crow. When you begin to look at the history of this country of blacks being lynched, it wasn't always being lynched because somebody black whistled at a white woman. Most of them were also about economics. Tulsa being burned down was economics. They were angry about black prosperity. How dare you Negroes actually build self-sustaining communities and you don't need us? That's why it was burned down. And so what is happening is, here we are today talking about mass incarceration, education, all these issues, but when you begin to ask the question, where is the money conversation, all of a sudden we get squeamish. Show me every significant problem facing black people, I will show you money is tied to it. John O'Brien is the founder of Operation Hope. John says, you have never seen a riot in a neighborhood with a credit score of 700 or higher. When that fool came to the Oval Office, see, first y'all gotta understand, I can't even use the word president in relation to that fool. Oh, let me be clear, y'all understand, some of y'all might be saying, oh yeah, you seen that right here. No, it happened at the White House. See, when the president comes in, and all of a sudden they call a meeting of all the TV anchors and folk like that, so I was one of the folks got invited. And so normally when the president walks to the room, you know, everybody stands up and they walk to the president. I was like that meme, the Simpsons, I just backed up. I was like, no, he would walk this side anyway, so I guess I go with him. So I was not even trying to walk towards that way, and so I was sitting here going, no way in hell I'm calling him the president. Then I said, no way in hell I'm calling him this one. I was standing there, I'm like, the hell am I going to call him? Then when the orange man finally came around, stuck his hand out, I went, hi. Good to see you. That's exactly what happened. That was the conversation. So we sit down. We're sitting there, we're talking about various issues, and he's going on and on and on about immigration, going on and on and on. I'm just like, ooh, Lord, this man is stupid. All of a sudden, he mentioned Chicago, and so I said, well, no, let's talk about Chicago. I spent 6 years in Chicago running the Chicago Defender, morning host of WVON radio. So talking about when Ron Emanuel was the mayor, and he came by his office, and Ron was talking about, he was like, what you look at crime in Chicago, Ron? And Ron began to tell him about education, economics. He's like, no, Ron, none of that has to do with crime. That right there is a fundamental law. Right now, Republicans all across the country are specifically targeting Democrats, saying they're soft on crime, and these cities are all out of control. And they're blaming for the policy, but you cannot have a crime conversation in America unless you have an economic conversation. Show me a neighborhood where the credit score is 700 or higher. Show me a neighborhood where the median average income is higher than the nation's median average income. I will show you a neighborhood with low crime. The maths. Show me the numbers. It's abundantly clear. You cannot talk about crime in America unless you talk about economics in America. You cannot talk about education in America unless you talk about economics in America. You have to be honest about what's going on in this country. When I have folks who begin to say, oh my goodness, I don't understand what's happening with these black and Latino reading rates and math rates. Well, I can show you if you go back before the child was born. I got to tie in prenatal care to whether or not that in the womb, that baby was being fed the proper nutrients, so by the time the baby was born, they were in position to actually survive. That's an economic conversation. You've got Republicans walking around this country excited about Roe v. Wade, talking about their pro-life, but don't give a damn about babies once they're born.
Hey, speak the word! Speak the word!
Don't tell me you're pro-life, but you're against Head Start.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you're pro-life, but you cut SNAP.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you're pro-life, but you don't care about the black maternity rate and the high rates of black women as you're having babies and dying, even when you rich like Venus Williams.
Amen.
Right now in Mississippi, they are estimating because Roe v. Wade has been overturned, there are going to be 5,000 additional babies born in the brokest state in America, and they are trying to figure out how they're going to pay for the 5,000. I'm like, y'all didn't think about that, huh? You can't tell me you are pro-life, but you against affordable housing. See, so we got to have a money conversation. The money conversation means for us to begin to have a power conversation. The reason I wrote the book White Fear, because in 2009, a study was done, and they asked the question, are you optimistic for the future of America for your children? Black folks, yes. Latinos, yes. Asians, yes. Only one group was less than a majority, and that was white America. John Avon and I went to CNN about to go on the air, and I said, John, we're living in the beginning stages of white minority resistance. I said, because 2043 is coming, and the reality is, it's about to make some folk real uncomfortable. And then you begin to see it play out. Then you begin to see it happen. And understand that Trump being elected was absolutely in response to Obama being elected twice, because if you study history, every period in American history of black success has always been followed by white backlash. Facts are facts. But I'm sorry, we now live in a country where folk are so upset about critical race theory and the 1619 Project and diversity, equity, inclusion, and multiculturalism, and now want to ban books. That's why we got some folks walking around having no clue, because they are unwilling to actually read true American history. You can't talk about American history if you only love the good stuff. Talking about economics in 2022 and housing patterns if you don't deal with the reality that it was a realty industry that created redlining because they were unwilling for black folks to live in white neighborhoods. MLK wrote in his book, The Chaos of Community, Where Do We Go From Here, where he said it cost America much to allow us to sit in parks, to be in swimming pools. So the question is, will America now write that much larger check? It's an economic challenge. Which is why, black folks, please, when King Day come around, stop playing the damn I Have a Dream speech or the mountaintop speech. Because if you're going to play the I Bet to the mountaintop speech, play the whole 43-minute and 16-second speech where he talked about economics and black economic collective. Where he talked about using the power of black collective to actually boycott. Where he talked about actually depositing money in black banks. Where he talked about how we wield our power. Play the rest of the speech, not just the mountaintop speech. That's like playing the hoop and you ignore the scripture. If we are going to confront or deal with us moving towards a nation becoming majority people of color, that means that we've got to be dealing today with the economic levers and how we are being denied, even when we got black folks elected. Because the mistake of the 1972 Gary Black Political Convention is that they assumed that if we get black political power, it will equate into black economic power, and that was one of the biggest mistakes. Because not every black mayor or black city council member is a Maynard Jackson who understood power. 1973, when he became mayor, blacks were getting 0.0012% of all city contracts. Not 1%. Not half of 1%. Not a quarter of 1%. Not an eighth of 1%. 0.0012%. So that's why when that airport was being built, he said tumbleweeds will go down this damn runway before allowed to be built without black participation. They hated Maynard Jackson so much because he understood the power of the ballot, and he also understood the power of the buck. His grandfather taught him the ballot, the book, and the buck. He was smart as hell, went to Morehouse at 16. But he understood political power, economic power. The only reason we call Atlanta the Black Mecca today is because Maynard Jackson used the power of his office to fundamentally alter the future of Atlanta economically. He was followed by Andrew Young. He was followed by Maynard Jackson. He was followed by Bill Campbell and Shirley Franklin and Concede Reed. And they go on and on because they understood its economic power. which is why Republicans have been killing themselves to try to get control of Jackson-Hartsfield Airport, because it is the biggest economic engine in the entire state. That's why in Jackson, Mississippi right now, they're bashing because they don't want Chokwe Lumumba to be in control of the airport in Jackson, Mississippi. They even said, well, how about if we'll fix y'all water crisis if y'all hand over the airport? I said, no, hell no, ain't that. Because that's money. That's power. In fact, many of something that was so-called black businesses, people know this, they said, look, man, we can't close our businesses for 6 months. The city pays them 180 days. And so he said, call the banks in. And then he'd already called the banks in and said, y'all need to put some black folks in the boards of directors. They said, we can't find you. And he said, okay, so the treasurer come in here, take all our money out their banks. They're like, hold on. In 2 weeks, they went and found some black people. So then he called the banks back in and he said, now listen, these folks over here, we have already provided them contracts. But they can't close their business for 6 months because we pay 180 days. So I need you to extend them credit lines. You will know what the contract size is. And you know we're going to pay them, you're going to get paid back. They said, no, what are you doing? He said, city treasurer, come here. I need you to take the city money out of their banks. Now, some of you watching, some of you elected officials, in fact, you elected officials, raise your hand. Some of you in here, elected officials, raise your hand. Now, some of you probably saying, well, you know, that worked like in the 70s. No, it actually work now. Because see, here's the deal. That's race neutral. You hold the power by saying, if you are unwilling to work with vendors that we have already certified and approved, then you are not going to have a city monies in your bank. That can work for the city, for the county, for the state. You can literally alter the business community for African Americans or other minorities by simply demanding that level of equity. But you must have the courage of a Mayor Jackson to do it. You must have the courage of Mayor Hatcher, the courage of Mayor Stokes, of Marion Berry, on and on, because they were willing to use political power to drive an economic agenda, which drove a community agenda, which is why you now are seeing your second and third generation of black businesses, because they understood that power. Right now, the federal government spends $560 billion a year on contracts. African Americans are getting 1.67% of the $560 billion. Go back and look at President Biden's speech last Saturday at the CBCF, where he talked about raising that from $9 billion to $100 billion. I was sitting at Congressman Jim Clyburn table. I said, please show me the plan, because I want to know how the hell you're going to go from $9 billion to $100 billion. And understand, I've been dealing with this issue on my show constantly, because again, it's a money conversation. And we've got folks who are walking around who are looking all cute and sitting here driving nice cars because they have comfortable salaries in government and corporate America. But the reality is, are you truly using your power while you're there? I've been calling out black folks sitting on boards saying, look, you didn't get your seat on the board because you so knowledgeable. No, that was because black folks raised hell. Earl Gray's and Black Enterprise in the 80s and 90s dramatically increased. And so I'm real clear. If you sit your ass on that board, I expect a rate of return. I'm not afraid to say, no, what you doing there? And don't come to me about no black internships. No, I want no black senior directors. I want no senior execs. Junior execs, I want to go to the next level. And see, understand. See, and we talk about how to wield power. When I was on my third time on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists, when Jeff Zucker was the head of CNN, no black executive producers, no black vice presidents, no black senior vice presidents, no black executive vice presidents, no black direct reports. And our board was like, well, what do we do? I said, no, we about to get in his ass. And they were still, I don't know. I said, watch this. So we called them out. Specifically. They were like, man, that might be a little rough. I said, oh, he gonna deal with it. And see, Jeff was like, oh, that's the NAACP. Yeah, that's the World Largest Minority People Organization, but they got 4,000 members. We can blow them off. I said, I got something for you. But see, Jeff didn't realize he was doing enough. So the first call I made was to my president every week. I said, I need a letter in 24 hours saying you staying with us and going to CNN. I had it in 24 hours. We released that letter, another news story. Then the Deltas released the letter. Then the Omegas released the letter. Now a couple of fraternities and sororities chose not to do so. And I ain't never forgotten.
No, let it be known.
And do understand, I don't call regional presidents. I call general presidents. That's power.
Yes.
So when they didn't act, that was their decision not to act. By the time we dropped 5 letters on them, AT&T, which owns CNN, they said, hey, listen, we need to get this off the front page. And so then the Warner Media CEO, he was going to release a statement saying that he stands with Jeff Zucker because Jeff said, well, I'll meet with NABJ, go without Roland. I told our board, I said, y'all bet not even go to any meeting without me. And they were more scared of me than them. They were like, yeah, we ain't gonna have that meeting. So here's what happened. Their Warner Media CEO was going to release a letter, and I got a phone call. And I said, well, we've been targeting CNN. I purposely have not been hitting AT&T. Well, you released that letter, and I could put a bullseye on your ass. That letter never got released. They said, you need to handle this. So this is what they did. They appointed a sister to be executive vice president over diversity. Ain't good enough. She wasn't a journalist. She was a lawyer. We said, not good enough. They were, damn. So they made one brother vice president. On the digital side, we said, not good enough, because the network is linear. They had named 5 black people in 2 months to executive positions, and then we said, okay, but I wasn't satisfied. I said, okay, for the moment. Understand, this is why they were freaking out. Because if I dropped 5 letters on them, they knew what was coming. I had 100 other folk lined up to drop a letter every single day to drive them insane. King talked about collective power. If we are moving and operating individually, then we are making a mistake, because then we are not changing. See, look, this area, they find the NAACP say something. They find if the Urban League say something. But it's going to be a problem if the NAACP and the Urban League and Divine Nine and Eastern Star and Prince Hall Mason and the Links and Ladies of Distinction and different churches all of a sudden are operating on the same page at the same time, and then folk ain't worried about who's speaking at the news conference, because the issue is not who gets the most attention, but who gets the most results. And so we must begin to understand how the collective power is used to change the economic dynamic. And so what we must be doing right now is looking at every single economic base in this city, in this region, in this state, in this region, and then say, what is our full potential or participation? And I'm not interested in small amounts of money. See that scene from Malcolm X when Brother Johnson was beaten by the cops, and then they call the cops, and the cops say, all right, you got what you wanted, now y'all break it up. And this here play Malcolm X said, oh, no, I'm not satisfied. The fundamental problem we're facing in 2022 is too many satisfied black people. I'm not satisfied with a Mercedes. I want to own the damn dealership. I'm not satisfied, and let me say this right now, I appreciate the young sister who spoke earlier, but matter of fact, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? I want you to stand up. Here's the deal. I appreciate what you're saying, but you aiming too low. You said you want a DEI job. The hell with a DEI job. You want a CEO job. Let me be real clear with you. And if y'all are DEI staffer, deal with what I'm about to say. Most DEI positions are BS. Most of them have no budgets. They have absolutely no P&L responsibility. They have no impact on the bottom line of the company. The CEO tells the DEI person what to do. So if you aim to be the CEO, then you are actually over DEI and HR and purchasing, all of that. And so don't aim to be ahead of DEI, because if you're a black CEO, then you can make sure DEI gets done. That's how we have to be thinking.
Yes, thank you, girl.
I was in LA at Stevie Wonder's radio station, and this sister, and I got there, and the sister said, I walked by my office, she was in accounting, and she said, a photo on her wall, and she said, I want you to meet my first rounder. And I was like, huh? She said, this is my son. I said, baby, don't you ever call your son no first rounder. She's like, what do you mean? I said, no, you should be raising your son to be the owner. I said, the owner make more money than the first rounder. She started crying. She said, no one had ever said that to me. She said, she literally started breaking down crying. She said, all this time I've been telling everybody, this is my first round. I said, baby, raise your son to be the owner of the team and not a player. Because when a player retires, the owner still gets paid. We had a Houston, Texas game, and after we were downstairs where the players and the coaches are, we were all waiting there. My nephew Chris was 3 years old at the time, and he had a football, and Chris actually signed his own name on the football, and his dad was like, Chris, ain't how it's done. I was like, no, I like how Chris thank you. And so we're waiting there, and Wade Phillips was the defensive coordinator. He comes out, and Chris hands him his ball, and he goes, Chris, what position you want to play? I said, oh, no, Wade, no, he ain't been raised to play Wade. Wade, he been raised to home. And he shot me a look. And I said, home. And I looked at him. That right there explains what is happening to too many of us in our communities. We literally are encouraging and raising our children to be employees. No. I'm talking about, if you want to change our power and change the dynamics, raise them to be CEOs, raise them to be owners, raise them to be the one who has the power to enact the change, because when that happens, then it becomes real. Then all of a sudden, we're not begging and asking. When I meet with companies, I tell them, don't send me your head of DEI. Don't send me your chief diversity officer. Send me your chief marketing officer, because they're the ones who control the marketing budget. Whoever controls the money has the power. And that has to be our state of mind in everything that we're doing. And when the president asks the members to raise their hand, do understand when we talk about being a member, it does not mean being a member on a sheet of paper. It does not mean a member on a database. What it means is when you get the call to show up, to go to City Hall, to go to the school board, to go to the county, to go to the state, then they must understand that we are walking in full force and in full authority. And that means if you're Albus, you wear your black and gold, AKs your pink and green, and so when they see you coming, they say, I don't know who the hell these folks are, but they're walking in here, lockstep, and they should be scared when they see your colors. We have been way too nice and meek in demanding what is ours. I'm not interested in 2022 being nice and meek. And I don't want to hear these things take time. King wrote Why We Can't Wait in a Birmingham jail. We were fighting some advertisers, and one of the black media guys said, well, these things take time. I said, what the hell are you talking about? You 78? The life expectancy of a black man, I said, no, every day you live is a bonus day because of life expectancy. I said, no, I'm not interested in waiting. I'm 54 in November. I'll be damned if I'm going to say, no, we'll wait. No, we waited since 1619, since 1865. We waited since all these things happened. I'm not interested in waiting for us to be able to maximize what it means to be an American. Now is the time for this generation to say, we're going to go harder, go faster, and get more, and are unwilling to be satisfied. And if you are sitting next to somebody who's satisfied and they are in leadership, throw them out of office. Because all they're doing
doing is getting in the way. I got no problem hitting the eject button for weak, impotent Negroes and scared allies who are unwilling to say what is necessary. This generation has to use its power. And we've got to be willing to walk in front of somebody and say, I will not back down, I will not back up, and if you think you're going to come at me, I will come back at you harder every single time. When that happens, stuff changes. So you must be walking in the spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer, in the spirit of Maynard Jackson, in the spirit of Marion Barry, in the spirit of brothers and sisters who came before us who were not scared, because if they could somehow face down dogs and guns, you can't tell me you can't face down blue suits and red power ties. So closing this way, when you leave here, you gotta make a decision. You gotta decide whether you're gonna, in the next 364 days, come back to this event and be satisfied with your table, and satisfied with your salad, and satisfied with your cake or your pie, and satisfied with your selfie, or are you going to use the next 364 days to rain holy hell on this city, on this county, on this state, to begin to demand the changes? And changes means if you vote down Amendment 3, you come back and say, I want to see more black participation when it comes to marijuana. You vote down Amendment 4. You use your power collectively to change this city. And if somebody says, well, I don't know what it takes, it's going to require fighting. Fighting is in our spirit. It is in our blood. And as my friend Brother Burton Woodson Tandy said, he said, we will fight until hell is over, then we will fight on the ice.